Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As we're getting started, what I'm hoping to achieve here is to give you the information about what community college jobs are like, the difference between adjunct and full time, how to get your foot in the door, what that job really looks like as a potential career, and to answer questions that you may have. So, yeah, and there's already a question there about equivalency, which is something that I don't cover specifically, but we can talk a little bit about that. That's the idea that you may have a degree that doesn't line up exactly, and a job description that may say related fields are allowed, and what that process is. And we can absolutely go through that and talk about that as we go through. So any questions that you have, go in the chat. If you want clarification, raise your hand. I'm going to share my screen and just get started to respect the folks who came on time, and we'll pick up with anybody who is coming in as we move along. So again, the goal here is community college careers, information for graduate students. I've been doing this for a number of years, and pleased to say that I have seen a couple of emails come through from previous attendees who proudly share that they got a job either as an adjunct or applying for a full-time position. So that's really the goal, is to open up these doors for potential information to make sure that we have that path open and you know what that is. So my name is Jody Balma. I am an alum of Cal State Fullerton in the history as undergrad, and then master's in public administration and a master's in political science from both Cal State Fullerton, and then my other one was from Claremont Graduate. I have been at Fullerton College for 23 years teaching in the political science department, and I've been honors coordinator for the last 15, helping our students with that transfer. And so I also serve as the co-coordinator of the political science department, and hire a lot of recent graduates to be our adjunct faculty. The skill set that we're looking for, at the community college, you really need to want to teach. That is the crux of the job. If you think of a hierarchical educational system that we kind of have, those who are teaching in the doctoral programs are really focused on research, and teaching is a very small portion of their overall workload. The CSUs, the Cal States in the state of California's master plan of education, the Cal States are really doing everything. They're teaching, they're researching, they're working with graduate students, they're working with undergraduate students. At the community college level, we're really focused on teaching. We're really focused on that lower division education, teaching introduction classes, teaching the major prep classes for transfer, obviously. I do a lot of mentoring, working with students one-on-one, working with students for what their potential jobs might be. A lot of them don't know what you can do with a particular degree. In the honors program, I certainly spend a lot of time with interdisciplinary, lots of different majors outside of political science. And then there's service. As a full-time professor, you are expected to do service to your department, to your division, to the college campus, and to the community. And what that looks like differs for everybody. Everybody has a different skill set. My contentious colleagues who like to fight a lot with the administration are perfectly served on our negotiating board for our union. Faculty Senate, I just left the Faculty Senate meeting where there's divisional representation. And so I'm representing the social science division in decisions that are made by that body of faculty that advise the campus. Shared governance, just like at the CSU, there's shared governance. We have that concept, and for that to work, faculty have to be willing to serve. As you're thinking about a skill set to whether or not the community college is right for you, really think about your own individual discipline, and whether or not you want to teach the intro classes, because that's the crux of what we do, is general ed classes. And so 80% of what I teach is political science, American government. Most of my adjuncts are hired to teach political science, American government. That is where the majority of our students are taking classes, because we have a general ed class, and then very few of the overall 20,000 students who go to Fullerton College would be political science majors that are taking our major prep classes for transfer: international relations, California government, comparative governments. Those kinds of classes are going to be a smaller part of your load. And so if you're thinking about your own discipline, and you hate that intro class, community college might not be for you. If you want to teach, Shakespeare in an English class, that might be one of the classes you teach, but it's certainly not going to be your full load of teaching assignments. You're going to be teaching a lot of intro, writing, intro English classes, critical thinking classes. And so that matters to what your work life looks like. Opportunity, on almost every single job application posting that you see, either for an adjunct or for a full-time tenure track position, permanent position, somewhere in there it will say teaching experience is desirable, and you have that dilemma of, how am I supposed to get teaching experience if you won't hire me to teach? And I really encourage you to look at what you can do while you are still in grad school. Experience, and whether that is a traditional formal TA position. I know that has expanded a lot at Cal State Fullerton. Look into that in your major, in your master's program. That experience is invaluable. And this is not a gatekeeper that you couldn't possibly get a first position as an adjunct if you hadn't done that, but it's an opportunity that I think is important to consider if you have that chance to do that. I also encourage you to start looking at the CCC registry. So the community college in California, we have 116 community colleges in California, and this organization posts all of the jobs at all of those. So you don't have to go to each individual campus, which is very nice. And so I'll show you how it works. And then I'll also put the link in, I'll put the link in the chat so you can kind of go along with it. So everybody, okay. So that's the link if you want to follow along. You can go to the college directory to kind of get an idea of the colleges that are in our area. You can also just do a search for a job, hit that advanced job search, and let's do anytime it's been posted. Let's see if there are any political science jobs in. I want to look for faculty jobs, and I want to look for region, and I'm only going to look in Southern California. And so right there, it returns there are student assistant positions open, there are federal work study, and then there are the part-time faculty pool. So Coast Community College in Costa Mesa. This is not actually, this is giving me everybody in that. So that didn't work. We're going to search by region and then go back to the advanced job search because they changed.
Real fast, none of us can see your screen. We can only see the PowerPoint. Let's
go back. So I have to share screen and show you this. There you go. So we're going to do, this is what it returns. And if we do the political science, faculty positions, and then we can search. And so it'll show all the political science faculty positions that are open. And so Santa Rosa Junior College is hiring a full-time, and you can then look and see what that job description looks for, what their desired qualifications are. So you can start to say, how would I build an application that is competitive? And so it tells you what the school is and the essential functions of what you do as faculty, minimum qualifications, a master's degree in political science, government, international relations, or, and this is true for a lot of postings, where they say you have to have a bachelor's degree in that and a master's in any of these other degrees. So if you had a bachelor's in political science and a master's in economics or history, you would be competitive. You would meet the minimum qualifications. They may choose somebody that had a better match. Preferred is going to be a master's degree in political science. So that's the difference between minimum qualification, where you can apply, and preferred. And then whatever they say for preferred is what you really want to emphasize in your cover letter. They're going to show you the application processes here. So you can look at that with the chat. When you're looking for part-time, that adjunct position, that is going to be something where you're most likely going to be asked to teach the intro level course. And so as you fill out that application, you wouldn't want to apply for an adjunct position to teach political science at Fullerton College and say, I really want to teach research methods to graduate students. We don't have any graduate students, and we are likely hiring to teach that intro level class that we have so many of. So just think about those sorts of things. You can always look at that school's class schedule to see what their classes are that they offer. And sometimes it will say in the job description what class they're looking for, if they're looking specifically for somebody to teach comparative government. When we had a retirement, we posted a job for comparative government because our full-time person had left and we hadn't yet hired someone for that. So let me go back to my, actually, let me just scan the chat and see if there are any questions so far. There's a question on equivalency that I'll talk about in a little bit, another one about equivalency. So counseling faculty jobs are very similar in that you're going to look at that job description. You want to look and see what their workload is like. Lots of community colleges ask their counseling faculty to teach counseling classes. And so a lot of it is similar to that. What are effective ways to assess the faculty culture within a given department? That is an excellent question. And one of the reasons you want to know what the culture is because you don't want to enter into a toxic, dysfunctional department, and there are some out there. I will caution you that sometimes the job is more important than, kumbaya. I entered an incredibly toxic, dysfunctional department, and I just kind of found a lot of friends outside of it that went to happy hour with me and complained about the same people. So it is survivable, but all things being equal, if you had 3 job offers, I would absolutely take the one with the better culture. If the dysfunction comes from your administration, much like the weather in Southern California, just wait, they'll leave. I think I'm on my 5th president of Fullerton College in 23 years. Some of those were interim, not permanent, but if I had decided not to take the job because I didn't like the president, he was gone within 2 years of me starting my career. So some of it you want to do that. How do you find that out? That's a little tougher, but talking to people is a really good way. I'm a huge believer in just trying to find people who will talk to me about things. And so, you can offer to take somebody to coffee and just talk about it. And they want to learn about you as much as you want to learn about them. And when we talk about the process of applications for a full-time job, I'll kind of go into detail about how little time we get with these people who we then are offering a 30-year job offer. And so the more information we both have, the better. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. Can you all see? Okay, it says I'm sharing that one, so that's good. So that's the CCC registry. You can also on there sign up for updates. You can tell them what you want, and that's a good way to kind of get an idea about kind of the breadth of the differences between an application and how people are doing it. So that's what it looks like, and you can sign up for that. So this is what we went through, this advanced search. You can search by region for what jobs are available. And so kind of already showed you that. The North Orange County Community College District goes further than that. We have a future instructor program. And I'm just going to pause for a second because my puppy is doing something weird. Oh, hi. Hi. Okay, I'm going to have you go. I know. Eat something that you're supposed to. Okay, so North Orange County Community College District has an institutionalized future teacher program. And so what we're trying to do is really reach out to underserved populations to try to encourage people who may not have thought about a community college job to try it out, to partner with a mentor to get that experience. And so you can join it. There's a stipend. I do not remember how much it is, but there is a stipend for our interns. I have an intern in my class, and so she is a master's student at Long Beach in the political science department, and she is embedded in my Monday, Wednesday, 1:20 to 2:45 class. She also goes to the district for training, for cohort with all the other mentors that are across different disciplines to talk about, you know, I think they've crowdsourced working on a sample syllabus for a class. They've worked on a cover letter just to have some of those in their arsenal ready to edit when the opportunity arises. But the Future Teacher program really does help prepare people for these job opportunities in community colleges. So usually it's in September when this opens, but they will often have Hire Me workshops as well. This slide talks about that we usually have, and the other districts do as well, have workshops. We have open houses to kind of get that information, because there is kind of a right and wrong way to apply for some of these jobs. And so we've tried to be more transparent in what that is. As an interview process, it's, you know, very different from the private sector. And so we try to help you with all of that with Hire Me workshops. And so those are usually announced in the fall. Adjunct positions we're going to start with. So if you've never taught before, if you haven't been a TA, how do you get an adjunct position? It really is about how you market and position what experience you do have. So, you know, maybe you've been an embedded tutor, maybe you've been a group leader, maybe you've done those kinds of things. You know, if you have the opportunity to do the mentorship program, it's a great way to learn all of those sorts of things. Getting hired is, you know, really depends on enrollment. It really depends on the need of the department. We hire adjunct faculty to teach classes that we can't teach as full-timers. The unfortunate part about adjunct faculty is that as enrollment goes down, our need for adjuncts go down, because they're the first that we let go as we're cutting classes. The reality is in Southern California, there are so many different campuses that a lot of our adjuncts are freeway flyers who are, you know, working at multiple districts. The pay for CSU versus community college is something to consider. You know, I started out teaching at Cal State Fullerton as an adjunct. I knew that I was interested in working at the community college. I didn't have any experience. The Cal State Fullerton didn't yet have the TA position in grad school that I could have done. And so I just went to my chair, who knew me well, and said, you know, how do I do this? And he said, apply to be an adjunct here at Cal State Fullerton. I did, they hired me. And so I was able to teach there, you know, so that's a possibility. to teach at Cal State Fullerton. The pay tends to be better at Cal State for adjuncts. And so it's something to consider is how much you get paid per class. Cal State Fullerton also offers healthcare benefits if you teach 6 units, if that is still the case. A number of my colleagues at Fullerton College also teach as adjuncts at Cal State Fullerton, and they qualify for healthcare benefits with 6 units at Cal State Fullerton. So just something to consider. The community colleges are trying to increase pay, but it's somewhere between, I think it's less than $4,000 a class. Don't quote me on that, but it's all public information. But that's kind of what something to consider of where you want to teach. Resume building, definitely think about how to write a CV, a curricula vitae that includes all of the experience that you have that could be useful in teaching. The service workshops that you've gone to, the professional development, something like this that you've attended can balance out your resume until you have more work experience. And then the other thing to think about is dual enrollment opportunities. A lot of community colleges nationwide, but certainly in California, are working with our local high schools to offer dual enrollment classes. And some of those have been, counseling classes. So in spring semester, high school students who know that they want to come to the community college would enroll in a counseling course at their high school and learn all of the things about college preparation, about our community college CSU UC system in the state of California, and then also in that class do enrollment, add classes and do their educational plans. That's how dual enrollment started. It has expanded greatly over the last decade and a half, so that now Santa Ana College offers what's called a middle college, where high school students take all 4 years of high school at the Santa Ana College campus, and they take their high school classes as well as college classes and end up with not only a high school diploma, but also an AA degree when they graduate from high school. Other campuses just offer some classes, but there's some opportunities there because very few full-timers teach these dual enrollment classes at our local high schools. And so if political science was going to teach American government or comparative government, often it's a class that may have an AP component that the school doesn't want to offer the AP class. They could offer a Fullerton College class or a Cypress College class or a Cerritos College class or whatever community college would be offering that. That's an incredible opportunity for adjuncts because we often don't have the adjuncts that I've already hired have the classes on campus. They may not be as interested in teaching at the high school. It is a great entry level way to get a job at a community college and be that adjunct. And then you may love teaching high school students at dual enrollment, or it may be a resume building job that you still get paid for, but it may be something that then you can build on a future application. So I'm going to stop sharing and ask if there are any questions about being adjunct. You can put it in the chat. You can raise your hand. So there's not a link to the future instructor program training because it's not available yet. It will come live in September, but I will get you the link for where that is and put it in the chat. Do you have any special advice on how to handle employment gaps on one CV? Honestly, I think that you're marketing yourself. And so I don't think you even necessarily, it's not a formal resume. You can put what you want on a CV and how you tell a story. And the same way that we tell students, you can turn a negative into a positive of what you learned during that gap or why you took that gap or the challenges that you have overcome to come back. And when we're talking about community college population, so many of our students have had obstacles and barriers and attempted things more than once. And so to have faculty who have that experience themselves, that have that lived experience of overcoming challenges is inspirational. And so turning a negative into a positive helps us see that. And so, yeah, I would embrace it. Okay, so moving on. There we go. Click it. Great. Okay, so applications, whether it's full-time or part-time, on an application, in a cover letter, personalize. Do your research, know what you are applying for. You know, I just shared with you, I don't even know what we pay our adjuncts. It's public information. I send them the link in the welcome email or that to our human resources. I don't keep track. So if you ask me what the benefit package is, I don't know. So do that research. It's all public information. Look at the department you're interested in for what the course offerings are. There's a wide variety of what that department might be offering. You know, and again, I'll use political science. We have American government, we have international relations, we have comparative government, we have introduction to public administration, we have contemporary issues, we have LGBTQ politics as a shared interdisciplinary course. And so if you really want to lead Model United Nations, we don't have that, but another campus does. And so you should not write a cover letter to Fullerton College's political science department saying, I am perfect for the Model United Nations. I'm going to read that and I'm going to say, you don't know anything about us. So do a little bit of research, look at what the catalog, the college catalog has as the approved classes, look at the class schedule, see, you know, we're still in this idea of some of our classes are on Zoom. Cypress has a lot of classes on Zoom still. We have gone to either asynchronous or in person. That modality, even if you haven't taught on Zoom or in online, sell that you were a student during the pandemic. Sell the idea that you have experience as a student in Canvas, which is the system that all of the California community colleges use. That kind of can really help, that we know that you know what this job is. I have looked at so many different applications for managers, for full-time positions, for all different kinds of jobs on campus, including, I was just on the hiring committee for the president of Fullerton College, and we had someone who didn't upload the right cover letter or didn't bother to change it from when he was applying to be the president of University of Colorado, and talked all about the research agenda that he was, you know, excited to support, and it's not us. And so I immediately kind of knocked him down a little bit and paid less attention to his application packet because he didn't mention anything about Fullerton College. He didn't talk about what he would do as president of Fullerton College. He didn't research or share that he had researched. Every community college is, you know, definitely invested in diversity and equity, as we should. Make sure that you share that. I've had on the what not to do, I have to rank each application as I'm viewing them. And one of the questions I have to rank is for diversity question, how they answer that, how they share what their experience is and their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. And I've had people who I can tell by their resume that they have done this work, but they don't tell me about it. And so I'm left with either grading them very low because they haven't articulated anything for me to grade, or trying to piece together from different parts of the application that I assume that if they worked at a historically Black college or university for 20 years. They probably have some experience with diversity, equity, inclusion, but they didn't answer it. So make it easy for someone to grade you high on each of those kinds of questions. And the diversity question, you should definitely be developing what your commitment is to the community college. If you're applying to the community college, the population that we serve, look at some of the initiatives that we have. And it's not always just a straight answer. I love the statements that, really reach deep into the folks who sometimes get left out of those conversations. The folks that are in our DSS office for accessibility and disabled students often get left out of this. I was just working with a student yesterday that they want to have a wheelchair scavenger hunt of trying to ask our administrators and our student leaders to get from point A to point B to point C on our campus in a wheelchair, because the construction is making it almost impossible for them to maneuver our physical spaces. And there's a bathroom that doesn't have an accessibility button across the street. Our new Starbucks that just was open doesn't have an accessibility button. And those things really matter. And so it's not just a strict, interpretation of what that is. It's what it truly means to you. And the more authentic you are, the better you are in all of these things. But make it easy for somebody. When we were hiring for political science full-time faculty, we had 200 applications for one position. And so I loved the people who made it really easy for me to read their information and see clearly what their voice was, and answered the questions that we had asked them to answer. So whether it's for an adjunct position or a full-time position, really take our application seriously, personalize it, do your research to know and share that you've done that research, and know that, but be enthusiastic about wanting to work for us, even if we know that you're applying for all 7 jobs that are available. We want you to fall in love with us. So an interview for a full-time position, we only get an hour, unlike the Cal States, where they may do phone interviews or Skype, Zoom interviews, I suppose, with their first pool, and then invite 2 or 3 people to campus and spend an entire day with them. We have 1 hour, and so we do a paper screening of those 200 people who applied, and we invite 10 or 15 of them to campus, 2 or 3 days of 1 hour interviews. There's a written portion. We want to make sure that you communicate, and that really allows you to show your voice of the enthusiasm or what you would emphasize in that written portion. There's a 20-minute teaching demo. And the questions that we ask are both content questions about the discipline. We want to make sure that you actually know the discipline we're asking you to teach, and then your pedagogy of how do you teach and how do you approach a student, and how do you deal with classroom management, and what is your passion and teaching philosophy. And then of those 10 or 15 that we might invite, we then forward 3 or 4 of those candidates to a second level with our president and vice president of administration and the dean of our division. Unlike the bigger universities where you would have a department and a chair of the department, we have departments, but there are only 3 full-time faculty members in political science. And so we're in a division with a dean who does a lot of the chair job things for our 10 departments that are within the division of social science. So that dean would really be the second level interview, where a chair might be at the university. So the survey link, and then I'm going to open to questions, but if you can push that QR code, and I'm going to do the link there so I can put that in the chat for this workshop. And I'm going to put that to everybody in the meeting so you can take that quiz. But I also just want to open it up to questions. So new questions. What is the typical length of the community college search process? It's a great question. It is long for a full-time position. And so adjuncts we hire whenever we need them. And another thing about adjuncts is that there's sometimes not a posted position. And so sometimes I'll have a last minute opening and I may contact the chair at Cal State Fullerton and just say, hey, do you have an adjunct that can teach this class? Because I need somebody in 2 weeks and I do not have time to go through the application process. I don't have time to post it. I have a really great relationship with my colleagues at Cal State Fullerton. And so I often will reach out to them and say, hey, do you have anybody, in 2 months when we want this class or even before? And so sometimes it's about having those relationships. I encourage you to reach out to your mentors. I encourage you to talk to people about the opportunities. I encourage you to really share that it's something you want to do. I scheduled a meeting with the chair of my department and said, I want to teach at the community college. How do I do that? And he said, you could teach here first, and then you would have that experience. And that was invaluable. A number of my classmates who were in the same graduate program, were shocked that I got hired as an adjunct and said, how did you get that job? And I said, I told him I wanted to teach at the community college. You never shared that with them. And so sometimes these opportunities are just available because you share that you're interested in it. And, Cal State Fullerton has come a long way in the last 25 years. And so now we've kind of institutionalized that. You have workshops like this. You have grad programs that are really trying to help do that. We have the Future Teachers program. Other districts have other opportunities. So the length for adjuncts can be super short. And I'll share this with you as well. So when I was teaching adjunct at Cal State Fullerton, I also said to my chair, hey, I want to build my resume as much as possible. I want to do all of these things. And would you mind making an appointment with the dean at Fullerton College so he could get to know me as somebody that's walking in the door with you? And as I left my resume and said, I've been teaching for 4 years. I can teach any class that you have, but if you had an adjunct position open, I live right down the street. If you gave me a half an hour notice, I could fill in a class. And he called me months later on the Thursday before classes started and said, I just had an adjunct drop out. It's more than 30 minutes. I'm just wondering if you're available. The class starts on Tuesday. And I said, absolutely. Thank you very much. I'd love to take the class. And then I hung up and I called my boss and I said, hey, so would it be possible to change my schedule at work? Because I now have this opportunity. And that's how I got started at Fullerton College, because I was just going to be available no matter what. Now, that's not how I got the full-time job. I had to go through the very long process. The timing for that is not always the same, but there's kind of a schedule. So we go through a process with our district, Fullerton College and Cypress College, and NOCE, which is the North Orange Continuing Education, are in a district. And so we have faculty positions for the district, and then we all fight about who gets to hire somebody, and the musical theater wants to hire someone, and ethnic studies wants to hire someone, and we all put in our allocations in fall, and that process takes about 3 or 4 months to prioritize and say, okay, if we have the money to hire 5 positions, these are the 5 that we would hire. We then post those positions in December or January. Then in February, those positions close. They're posted for 3 to 6 weeks. They open. We try to advertise as much as possible. They then close. The committee meets and reviews all of those applications. And then weeks later, so it may be 6 weeks between when you submitted your application and when you get an email saying we would like to talk to you. And then we tell you, here's the topic for the teaching demo. Prepare 20 minutes on federalism, and then here's the schedule. And so it may be that you apply in December and you don't find out you have an interview until March, and then the interview is in April, and then you find out 2 weeks later that you have a second interview and you get hired in May. It's a very long process. And then your job doesn't start until August. So it's a very long process for full-time, and just be prepared for that. nothing moves quickly. And that length of time also is true for our staff. It can take a tremendous amount of time. I've been on hiring committees where, we call the person for an interview and they're like, I already got a job. Like I have to eat. I cannot wait for 6 weeks to get a job interview. And so it's a very painfully slow process. And I wish that weren't true, but it is. So, Julian.
Yeah, I was just wondering how often would you say that happens where you contact someone from Cal State Fullerton at like short notice, like without posting a position online?
So it's being recorded. So should I say that I never post?
Yes. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, if that's
And I always ask my friends at Cal State Fullerton, and here's what I say. Who would be a great teacher who isn't going to get the opportunity? I want them. I want to open the door for the path to pay it forward to the chair of Cal State Fullerton who gave me that opportunity. And so I'm always asking them to send me the people who they think that would be brilliant in the classroom. We don't have full-time positions at Fullerton College. I was hired in the year 2000. The next full-time position we had was 2019.
Wow.
And with declining enrollment because of the lack of affordable housing, the lack of birth rate, people, young people aren't having kids. There's nationwide attack on higher education. Those are all conflated variables that are decreasing enrollment. And so political science may not hire for another 19 years. I do not know. So
Right.
I feel an obligation to try to give as many young people who've never taught before. I don't need to hire somebody who's taught. They're not going to get the full-time job. And so I want to reserve those positions and opportunities for people, and then go get the full-time job at Rio Hondo, go get the full-time job at Compton College, go get the full-time job somewhere else, because all I have to offer is the first entry-level position. That is not true of all departments. Lots of departments, are going to be hiring full-time. And so they want to be more equitable about getting that adjunct pool that I just call Cal State Fullerton. So.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And that's your department, or did you say all
Just my department, just political science. And
Okay.
so the last time I hired an adjunct was because one of our adjuncts got a full-time job. So Brenda left and got a full-time job. And so I knew in May we had a party, and then I called the folks at Cal State Fullerton and said, we're going to have 2 classes. And so, start thinking about who's graduating and who will have a master's degree. And then we met with them, and, we always encourage people to do the future teacher program. So sometimes it's making those connections. But I don't want to look at 500 applications from all over the state.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I should, but. Okay.
Yeah.
So Christopher asks, would not having a PhD put someone at a significant advantage? Okay, so this is my biggest mantra for you to hold on to is, if you don't get hired, it's not you, it's them. It is almost always them. So if you had a PhD, it could be negative for our sociology department because none of the full-time faculty in sociology have a PhD. If you were applying for the history department at Fullerton College, every single one of the full-time faculty members at Fullerton College has a PhD. So they value the PhD differently. And that's just a personal bias. There's nothing that says somebody who has a PhD or doesn't have a PhD is better or worse or more qualified or less qualified. It's all just quirky biases that we bring to the table when we're a department. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's almost impossible to get hired full-time at Fullerton College in the history department right now. But maybe if there were retirements, that would start to change. I don't know. The math department at Fullerton College seems to favor PhDs for their full-time. They have tons. Everybody has lots of adjuncts that only have masters. And I only have a master's. I looked, I was at Claremont Graduate University, and I was in a doctoral program, and it was going to cost $56,000 to finish. And the difference on the pay scale between what I earn and what I would earn with a doctorate is $3,000 a year. and I wouldn't pay that off for the 27th year. So I didn't pursue the doctorate to full. So it's all just quirky personal biases of the people who are making these decisions. So there's no hard and fast rule. Some departments have to be sold. So if you were applying as a history for a full-time, you would really need to, say that it's an advantage that I have a master's and this is what all the things I've done. If you were applying to sociology and you had a PhD, one of the fears that some people don't want to hire a PhD is because we don't want to be second best. We don't want to be, your last resort, that you couldn't get hired anywhere else. And so you're coming to us. But, sometimes I see people who are applying to Fullerton College from a four-year university, University of Colorado. I had somebody apply, again, from University of Colorado. I had somebody who applied from University of Florida. And I was like, do you really want to teach here, or do you just want a job that gets you to California and then you want to apply to Cal State or UCI? I don't know if I'm going to get this position back if I hire you and you leave in 3 years or 5 years. And so I was a little bit worried about that person who had a PhD, who was tenured at the University of Florida, who didn't write about how she loved community college students or had a passion for teaching our students. And I was hesitant because of that. But I look at the person. So, Angelica.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, yeah, my audio is a little messy.
Nope, now I can't. Do you want to type it in the chat? Because now I can't hear you at all. So I'm going to go to Aslan, and Angelica can type it in the chat and then I'll read it.
Hello.
Hi.
I was wondering, I feel like I've seen one of like these seminars before, and you brought up the future instructors training. How competitive is it to get in? Like what are the odds? And I know like is there anything that I should know? I think like I had also seen like you have to be almost done. So I just wanted to see like the requirements and how competitive it is to get into that program.
Yeah, so I have never been on the application, I've never been on the evaluation side. I've only been a mentor. So I don't know the exact answer to that. I think it's less competitive than perhaps we say on the website. I think sometimes we're taking people who might not almost be done. The goal, of course, is, not to have people who haven't even started their master's program yet. But depending on how many classes left, I don't know what their metric is for that. They recommend, thank you, Diana. They recommend for you to be 75% done with your graduate degree. So that's helpful. So I don't think anybody's going to kick you out if you're 74% done. If you're 13% done, you probably need to wait, but you can look at that. And so I put, yeah, you don't have to be in school, but you should have your master's almost done. The goal is, of course, for us to provide that experience so that you can hit the ground running when you graduate. So if you're out of school, you can absolutely still apply. That is absolutely fine if you've already graduated. And I've had, I think, 2 interns who were finished, and that just opened up their schedule because they were, working full time while they were in the program. And so it was just going to be a lot to add the mentorship program. And so they did it the semester after they graduated. That was fine. I had one person, I think, who had been out for 5 years. So yeah, just came back and wanted that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. How can a first-year college student like myself get experience becoming a professor? That's a great question. I love that you have the initiative to be here. Yeah, I think just looking into what your school offers as far as being a TA, Fullerton College has embedded tutor programs And we do not restrict to only Fullerton College students. I've had a number of embedded tutors who were hired while they were in their undergraduate program and had transferred to Cal State Fullerton. And so that's another opportunity. And if you live closer to another community college, look into that. We now call it Hornets tutoring. It used to be embedded tutors, but that's a possibility while you're starting. And we certainly have grad students who are in that embedded tutor program. You're working one-on-one with a faculty member, and part of it, both the embedded tutors and the future teacher program, the goal is for you to really see the class through the eyes of the professor, of what would you need to do, how would you react to this, what would you want to present about this subject, and just to include a couple of the questions who are up here, and then I'll go back up more. You do not need a community college credential. That is really long time ago that we used to have that. We don't have any teaching credential. Like K through 12, you have to get a teaching credential in the state of California. We used to have a community college credential. We do not have that anymore. We ask that you have a master's for your education. And then you don't have to have a syllabus finished. I don't ask to see a sample syllabus, but I like you to start thinking about what your syllabus would be, because the first time you teach a class, it is so much work. And so thinking about that a little bit at a time and preparing yourself for what that would look like. I went to, oh, my dog is super excited about a cat. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. The first thing I did when I got hired as an adjunct at Cal State Fullerton was go to the division office. And by the way, if you haven't made friends with the staff that work in your department, you should do that. They are amazing and such incredible resources. And so I said, can I take a look at every syllabus for Political Science 100? And they said, absolutely, here's the binder. I think now they would probably give you access to a Google Doc, but it was so helpful. And I made a spreadsheet because I'm insane. And I said, like, how many books and how many tests and how many everything, because I didn't want to be the hardest teacher teaching American government, and I didn't want to be the easiest teacher. And so I wanted to be right there in the sweet spot of the middle. I didn't want it to be the hardest class my students had ever taken, but I wanted to make sure that I was offering a rigorous course that followed the course content. So that's kind of just thoughts about thinking about that. I got great advice from my mentors. I went and asked them, what should I know? What should I prepare? And one of the best pieces of advice was pick your second favorite book to assign to the students, and your favorite book is yours for resources. So you sound brilliant. That's awesome. I'm going to do that. And then the other advice that I got was take a piece of paper and put a line down the middle, and on the left, write everything every professor has done that you hated. And on the right, write down everything professors have done that you loved or you appreciated or you respected. And that is still my overarching teaching philosophy, is I respect my students. I want them to know that I respect their time. I had a professor, I worked full time, and then I went to these 7 to 10 classes for my master's, and he would walk in, stroll in at 7:15, and he expected to make up that 15 minutes at the end and keep us until 10:15. And I was like, 9:59, that's when I want to leave this class. And I hated the idea that he didn't respect my time, because, leaving 15 minutes later meant that I got to sleep 15 minutes later, which meant that I was tired in the morning, and it just threw my whole schedule off. And so I am always really respectful of people's times. I talk on the content. I don't talk about, my cat or the weather or whatever is non-relevant. But I still kind of reflect on a mental list of what I liked as a student, and how to do that. And so what is really interesting is You've spent years in classrooms by the time you're graduating with a master's degree. But being on the other side of the podium or the other side of the Zoom or the other side of the Canvas page is a really different experience. And so you really get some value out of that teaching experience, being an embedded tutor, being a teaching assistant, being a grad assistant, whatever those opportunities are really helpful. And if you don't have any of that, I would just encourage you to talk to some of your favorite professors and say, can I sit in on a class? Can I just sit in and take notes and say, oh, that classroom management? Because if you have a student who, I had a student on Monday who was really manic and combative in class discussion, and she had never, we're week 8, so she had never done that before. And I thought like, oh, I know how to handle this because I've handled it for 20 years. But that would have been a really great example for my intern to see, like, how do you just kind of maneuver when my kids were young in school? I got some really great parenting tips from the kindergarten teacher of these little sing-songy things. I was like, oh, that's a really great parenting tip to, dot, dot. I don't even remember it now because my kid's graduating high school, but it was something about not too much glue. And I was like, dot, dot, that's enough. Okay, whatever. I'm sure it rhymed. But so I'm just going to read the chat. And so Hukuliani, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just wondering, especially because I am graduating undergrad in the fall, and right now I was looking at the multi-subject with the teaching credential from Cal State Fullerton, but I was thinking about the adjunct professor. Is there a master's degree we should focus in?
So the master's degree that you earn and the multi-subject credential would be to teach K through 8.
Mhm.
And then single subject credential is to teach, secondary high school. And dot, dot, not a lot. Thank you. That was going to bug me. I was going to, text my 18-year-old and ask if she knew. Dot, dot, not a lot anymore is too much glue. So the master's that you get is going to be the education that you have to apply for the master's for the teaching jobs. And so if you wanted to get a graduate degree in education, it would be really difficult for you to get hired because a lot of those adjuncts are going to be teachers, people who are already have that experience to teach future teachers in a K through 12 system. And that's, business is a little bit harder because often those departments are looking for people who are in the field working. But so talk to people, talk to your professors in those departments about what those kind of opportunities are. Look at the CCC registry to see what job opportunities are there and what graduate degrees. And you kind of have, a lot of choices that you can make based on that information. But just start talking to people about it and say, hey, if I wanted to teach at the community college level, what do those opportunities look like? And then just take it all in. Jessica. Do you have a question, Jessica?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. And then I'm going to answer the questions in the chat.
Sure. So you mentioned that it would be great if applicants made the application process a lot easier to read. And so I'm someone applying to the community college that I went to. When I applied, when I had my master's from my PhD program, I was told by my own mentors that I was too green, and they went ahead and hired a PhD student from my own PhD program, and who was just as green, to be honest.
Sure.
Who had
Sure.
no experience teaching at the community college level and honestly had not the lived experience of a community college student. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I make myself more marketable in my application this time around? But
So
what I do have beyond the teaching experience at UCLA, at the community college, TA, and teaching first gen programs specifically, I oversaw the teacher prep program at my community college
Yeah.
afterwards, and I still wasn't competitive enough. But since then, I've worked for the LA County Board of Supervisors and the mayor's office. So I'm trying to figure out how to market myself I have a history and anthro degree, but to a humanities role.
Okay. Yeah, and those interdisciplinary are a little bit tougher because again, and I'm going to emphasize, it's not you, it's them. And they have some quirky biases. And sometimes it's it's an advantage. Hold on. Sometimes it's an advantage to have people that know you, and sometimes they feel like they, you know, they put a value on the unknown. And you know, I'll quote my father that even Jesus had to leave Nazareth to be considered the Lord. The idea that it's not you. And so it's not necessarily that there's anything else you need to do, but you know, maybe applying to a different community college where they wouldn't have that bias might be an advantage. It's also on humanities of what classes you're looking to teach and what the opportunities are. And I don't know the answer to that, but it sounds like you have done everything you should do and more. It sounds like an incredibly competitive application.
Yeah,
And
I mean, that's why I gave up, to be honest. Like, I'm actually only applying because a colleague of mine who I used to share an office with like 10 years ago, like maybe 20 years ago, actually, she said, you should apply because it hasn't been open since then, right? And so
right.
I said,
Yes.
honestly, I'm so jaded. And
I know.
I'd like job security, to be honest.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and the person I was in a PhD program with, she's still a freeway flyer, you know, making 40K a year, but her parents paid it off. And I left
Yeah.
my PhD program because they didn't. But I say all this because these are the barriers, right?
Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. And it's important to look at that future that you know, there's some people who you know, I at the beginning I thought like, hey, I have a full-time job. I'll keep it and I'll just teach on the side. It seems fun. And then I fell in love with it and it worked for me. But we have an adjunct in my department that I was in grad school with, and he's a full-time high school teacher. He adjuncts for us, but he has applied for the last 20 years to full-time positions and hasn't got it. And maybe he hasn't applied as much as somebody who didn't have a full-time job, but I can't imagine the frustration because he is an excellent teacher. I have served as a reference for him. And so I've gotten the opportunity to talk to him about making the finals. And again, you know, I just tell him every time, not that it makes him feel any better, it is not you, it is them.
Yeah.
And
honestly,
that's
I get that, but I feel like my whole goal getting my PhD was so that I could come back to teach
correct.
at the community college that I was from. To be honest, with professorial representation that didn't look like me teaching history.
Correct. And I think that, you know, those stories are really important. You know, the position at Fullerton College that we had 200 applicants. We interviewed 18 people. We hired one. And I fell in love with 9 of them. I still think like, oh, what if Stephen was my call? You know, like we could have hired any of those top 9 and they were brilliant. And you start to look at the applications and I don't know if I would have gotten an interview with this pool. So it is really tough.
Yeah. And what set that 1 out of 200 that got hired?
The president makes the choice. And so at that point, when we sent the 3 people to the president and the vice president, the president had the choice. So I don't know why the president chose that person over the other 2.
I mean, that's the reality though, because even in the foundation world, I mean,
Yes.
I just recently interviewed for a role that had 600 applicants. And
Right.
honestly, I was interviewed. So I was like,
Right.
you know, that's a miracle in itself.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I still have the question about equivalency later.
About what?
Equivalency.
Oh, right. At the very top. Yes. So I'm going back up. And so Jessica says in the chat, a private message, so I'll just read it. Since my degrees are in history and anthropology, who should I reach out to at the community college to get the required equivalency for humanities? That is district by district, and equivalency doesn't happen until you're hired.
Okay.
And so
So I
when
don't have to
Cypress
compare-
hires somebody for political science who doesn't have a political science degree, then I am called to go to the district to set on the equivalency. So it's not something that we do globally. I hired somebody to teach our public administration class who has 30 years in public administration and didn't have a bachelor's in it, even though he had a master's, and we had to go to equivalency, and I had to fight for him to get that because it wasn't specified. I won, but
It's not something I need by the time I apply.
No.
Because, okay, because I reached out to HR and they didn't
Yeah.
get back to me. And I also reached
Yeah.
out to the equivalency committee chair, but I haven't
Yeah.
heard back either. So I just want to make sure my
yeah.
eyes are.
And so I would suggest that you look for campuses where history and anthropology are in the humanities division, because our history and anthropology are in social science. So it would be a bigger leap for them to hire you when they're not familiar with those two departments.
Yeah. So for the college I'm applying to, history and anthro is also under social science.
Yeah. So stay after and I'll talk to you individually. So what is the process to decide if prior classwork is the equivalent requirements? Again, it's once you get hired, then they sort of do that equivalency. Counseling faculty, I answered. Assess the faculty culture, great question. Super toxic people. Is there a link? I gave you the link in the chat for the Future Instructor Program. If you want to become an adjunct counselor and teaching intro counseling class, do you recommend to build a number of counseling experience beforehand? Yeah, absolutely. And really talk to your counseling faculty about that. Talk to some colleagues that may be in the program that are teaching adjunct counseling, because you really do kind of want to find out how that works. And it's different from college to college. So I wouldn't be able to answer what the best path is to be competitive at a particular college in counseling. We talked about that. We talked about the syllabus. I have a particular interest in doing online instruction. Are there special needs that Fullerton College has in this area that I should be aware of? So one of the nice things about the mandate that all community colleges use Canvas is that that is something that we're looking for, is experience with Canvas, knowing that modality. And I believe that Cal State Fullerton now uses Canvas because I gave some workshops to my colleagues in political science on how to use it, and said it's really great. It has some problems, but it's so much better than the other learning management systems that I've used in the past. So lots of campuses are doing online instruction. So it's just a matter of looking at the class schedule to see what those departments at those colleges are offering. Everybody's a little bit different and things are changing. As some administrators are really mandating a return to campus, we are never going to get rid of online instruction. That's just the reality. And students are asking for it in a bigger way. I don't know, asterisk, whether or not the incoming students from high schools who had a terrible, awful experience with Zoom in 2020 and 2021. My daughter was on Zoom for 6.5 hours a day and counted absent if she turned her camera off. She doesn't want to have anything to do with online education. So I don't know, but there will always be a demand for online education. And since all of the faculty had to pivot really quickly, we're expanding those offerings. So, Andre, I'm happy to talk to you after the session is over about particular colleges that may work with your discipline. So Jessica, okay, so resubmitted that, great. Diana's super helpful in answering things. How can it, yeah, we talked about first year. Anything else? Practice interview questions that focus on why your experience. Yeah, I think Diana has some really great suggestions. And practicing how you would answer some questions that come up in the interviews, looking for sample questions for instructor positions is helpful. thinking about how you would answer some of the classroom management questions, using the experience that you do have. The other, tip that we offer is that whenever you get an interview question, no matter what the situation is, it should always be in two parts. You should always answer a question with a general philosophical answer and then specific examples. I want to know what you think, but also how you would specifically handle something. And sometimes people get too broad and don't give me any overarching guide, or they just concentrate on what happened at their last job. And I'm like, I don't know how you would handle it in the future. I don't know what you've learned. So, if you can structure answers, and we give you a chance to look at the questions before, we let you take notes. We're not trying to blindside you with questions, but, sometimes we'll prompt you if you haven't fully answered, but we have lots of people that have lots of notes. But try to come up with a specific example. And even if you don't have that experience, you can certainly pivot and say, from what experience I have, although I've never written a Title V grant, I have experience writing other grants. I have experience doing this. This is what I would apply. And these are the people I would go to ask for help. And I think that idea of what is your thought process? What would happen if you encountered something you don't know, as we all do? And having somebody who, really talks about, I would want to reach out to the people, I would want to get more information, I would want to talk to the people that we're writing the grant for. That thought process is helpful. So Jessica, if you have another question, I'm just going to go through any other questions in the chat. Oh, Aslan said, since you're supposed to learn from the teaching program, is it unfavorable if you already have TA experience? No, all the experience is good. So yeah, TA experience is great. Did I lose Jessica, or did you still have your hand up from before? So the experience for somebody, go ahead.
I'm curious, are there any alone interviews that you've seen where someone gives a teaching demo that you're like, what did you like about it?
So it's always an awkward situation when you do a teaching demo, and just acknowledging that it's kind of a meta situation where I'm asking you to act like I'm a student, but clearly I'm not a student. And so, somebody who is vulnerable and just says, so I'm going to pretend you're students. Well, I want to see their personality in the classroom. I want to see their innovation in the classroom. I want to see how they engage. I want to make sure it's not a 50-year-old standard, yellow legal notes where they're just standing at a podium and reading. Teaching is what we do, and I want great teachers. And that's also for adjuncts. I meet with you to get, I'll take you out to coffee or talk about it. And then I do want to help you become a better teacher. And so I want to see a teaching demo that kind of demonstrates that. So the things that I don't like in teaching demos that kind of make me hesitant, is somebody who just has a PowerPoint that they read to me. Wow, that is super boring. Somebody that's not engaging, somebody who, won't talk to us about things, doesn't have open-ended questions that make you think. And it's hard to get all that in a 20-minute. But yeah, and you can think about the most boring class you've ever had. Don't do that. Don't do those things. Somebody who is adept at technology is great, but I'm not really looking for all the bells and whistles. I've had people who had no tech and were incredibly engaging. And I felt like at the end, like, oh, I would listen to you read a phone book. That's also incredibly impressive as somebody who uses lots of tech and is adept at all that. Just be yourself. I really do want to see what you're doing in the classroom. And don't try to be somebody else. So, yeah. So what is the experience like for somebody who wants to teach later in life? Honestly, in business, that is the kind of dominant path, that they're hiring people who are in the field. If you think the chair of our business department at Fullerton College, I think he's been there for 30 years. The number of things he does not know he doesn't not that he doesn't know, but he certainly never worked with Slack. He's never worked with Teams. He's not like, he's just not from that experience. And so he hires adjuncts who are in the field to teach these classes and to give real life experience. So that's absolutely, that might be less likely in some other, I don't know what example would be, you know, I don't know that we hire people from philosophy corporations to teach our philosophy and logic classes. But, you know, it depends discipline specific again. But yeah, business, absolutely. We hire a lot of people for the field. For our graphic design, for our gaming classes, we hire people who are working in the field for our adjuncts. So that's a little bit tougher to crack through if you don't have any experience. Teaching experience looks great. Yeah, absolutely. Have at least 2 professors who wouldn't mind serving as your references. Yeah, and I will say that for those references, I would have them write a letter for you, give them lots of time. You know, I always tell my students who are applying for a scholarship or whatever, that the hardest part of writing a letter of recommendation is the first draft. And once I have that, you know, I just sent out, March 15th was the deadline for a whole bunch of transfer applications. And, you know, somebody that I've written applications for years said, oh, I have a grad school application due, but I can't bother you with it because it's due next week. And I was like, it's already written. I just have to open it up and change it from, you know, applying to transfer to Stanford to applying for grad school at American University. I can do that in 5 minutes. Sure, absolutely, no problem. You certainly couldn't only give me 2 days notice if it was the first time you're asking. So develop that relationship with a mentor, and, you know, having 2 or 3, I think is really great advice. And in particular, I think you will start to learn which professors respond quickly and which don't. And you may want to ask the people who respond quickly and reliably to be your reference for those last minute things, because sometimes you'll miss out on an opportunity because that application wasn't complete. So doing that in advance, definitely kind of having you know, council of advisors is helpful. And again, your faculty mentors, the people that you're working with in grad school, get to know you really well in these smaller classes. And when you make those relationships, I really encourage you to go to office hours, to meet with them, and to rely on their advice of, you know, what would you do, and share with them what you're interested in. Because, you know, I have 50 different paths that I could encourage you to go down. I am not going to sit and recommend all 50. So once you start to help me narrow what you're interested in, that advice, that those recommendations get personalized for you. So this, you know, think of your mentors, you know, sort of like Amazon recommendations. The more you talk with them about what you want to do, the better they are able to individualize the advice that you give. Because, you know, I don't want to tell you about the internship for Washington, D.C. if you never want to leave Los Angeles. And so I don't want to bombard you with all of these opportunities that I get. It's easier when I start to know. And then I see a scholarship opportunity for somebody who wants to, you know, get an internship for the mayor of Los Angeles. I can send that directly to them. And then I also share it with everybody, but I'm sending it directly to those folks. So I think it's really great advice. Anybody else have a question? Otherwise, I'm happy to stay for a little bit and answer individual questions.
I'll ask a question.
Sure, Amy.
So I teach in special ed, and I've kind of Googled a little bit online, and I've come across postings that are for like non-credit courses for individual students with disabilities.
Yes.
How does that work?
So look at that. It's all public information, right? All of our salaries are public information. And so go to the district, North Orange County Community College, South Orange County Community College, Santiago, Rancho Santiago District, and Coast District. So there are 4 districts in Orange County. And again, on that CCC registry, it has all of the districts listed. That's where our human resources are. That's where our salary schedules are. That's where our future intern programs are. The district handles all of that. So look for non-credit salary schedule, because it's a different pay scale than credit courses. And for instance, all of our North Orange County Community Continuing Ed classes are non-credit,
Okay.
right? And so they have a different pay scale.
Oh, okay. And does the
And how you get paid for an
application
individual
thing?
student, you know, like our music staff offers private tutoring, and so they get the different pay scale for that than if you were teaching a class.
Oh, okay.
But that's kind of what you want to look at. And so
Okay.
I'll direct you again to the chat. Everyone, before you leave, make sure you take that survey that Julie put in the chat, and you can just click on that. And then if you have questions, I'm happy to, if you have a general question, I'm happy to answer. And if you want to stay and ask an individual question, I'm happy to answer anything you've got. But thank you all for coming. I hope to see lots of you in our community college classrooms.